Radio-Athens, and welcome to Education Matters, the official voice of the youth. Education Matters is sponsored by Drug-Free Athens, helping to prevent substance abuse by youth, and your local internet station, Radio-Athens.com. My name is Kareem, Lumpkin, and joining me are my co-hosts.
Robert Miller,
Thomas Smith,
Cece, Patterson.
And today's on Education Matters, we will be discussing black journalism and life at Morehouse.
I'll go ahead and open us up with our first segment about the admission process and student orientation. So you can go ahead and ask me and tell me a little bit about that process and the student orientation.
First, you need to ask who they are. You got to introduce your guests.
We are here joined today with our guests.
My name is FREDDRELL Green. I'm an alumnus of the Education Matters show.
And my name is PIERRE. I am a friend of FREDDRELL Green's.
So like I was saying before, can you two give me a little bit about the admissions process and student orientation?
So I'll go ahead and start with my admissions process. First off, I want to say I'm glad to be back here at Radio-Athens, Education Matters. I want to thank Mr. Dunn for inviting me and my friend PIERRE back on the show. For me, I never always wanted to go to Morehouse. I knew about it. I knew about its legacy ever since I was, a young toddler. But I never really knew where exactly I wanted to go. I just wanted to, when I first started doing journalism, when I first started knowing what I wanted to do with my career, I just wanted to apply anywhere that had a pretty good journalism program. So I had gotten a scholarship from the University of Missouri. It was a $86,000 scholarship. It was, at that time, and still is touted as one of the top schools of journalism in the country. And I was really banking on, accepting that offer. But, my mom stepped in, and I won't go into any details, but she kind of showed me why it was that Morehouse really was the place to be for me, especially since, it's part of the AUC, the Atlanta University Center. My father went to Morehouse College, which is right around that area in Morehouse. So, as the application process set in and I was getting ready to submit it, as the months flew by and I applied and was waiting on my acceptance, as the days flew by, I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and I was getting more and more anxious to join Morehouse. And when I finally got that acceptance letter, it was like one of the happiest moments of my life, even though I didn't know what to expect.
And well, for me, first of all, I want to say thank you for having me on the show. This is my first time, even though for years Athens has been like a third home to me. For those who don't know, I'm the grandson of the late Dr. Ivory Clifton and Miss Patricia Clifton, who were graduates of Tuskegee University. And my mother, she went to Howard University. And for a while, I too was also really not leaning on going to an HBCU because my intended major was to study wildlife conservation. I've been passionate about wildlife animals for as long as I could think of. So, of course, PWIs is where they have better studies in that field. Yeah. And the two schools that I was really leaning on going was either Colorado State University in Fort Collins or Eckerd College located in St. Petersburg, Florida. But around late November, early December, something really clicked for me because I felt like that being at an HBCU for undergrad, I would really allow myself to find out who I really was as a black man. Plus, I was way more familiar with Morehouse because not only is it in my birth city, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm also a legacy. My grandfather, my dad's father went there, and I have several uncles who graduated from Morehouse. So I'm the first of my mom's side to go to Morehouse. And once I stepped onto that campus for the second time, it was for a tour back in December. It immediately felt like home, and I was like, this is the place. Now, while I didn't get any scholarships, that still didn't stop me from immediately committing the day I found out. And I'll admit, the admission process was a little more stressful than I intended, but it was all worth it at the end.
Thank you, Kareem. I want to ask y'all, are there some things about the HBCU that maybe people outside who don't go to HBCUs that you've known or you experienced going to an HBCU?
Are you talking about just HBCUs in general or Morehouse?
HBCUs in general.
So I'll say this about HBCUs. For black people, for African Americans in particular, I feel now in this day and age, it is the greatest time to ever choose an HBCU as your college choice.
It really is.
I'll say this because, as you may know, affirmative action has been discontinued. So now that means more and more people are going to be pouring into the applications for HBCUs because they want a chance to succeed in college in an environment that is conducive to their respective success in each career field. And more HBCUs are getting more and more opportunities from not just other black sources of finances, but from predominantly white institutions as well. I mean, at Morehouse, we have things such as the Black Men's Research Institute. I'm a part of the journalism program. Our program was funded by Michael Jordan, Spike Lee.
And Spike Lee was also a proud alumnus of Morehouse College who, and this is not really off topic, but for the first week of college, it wasn't even a first full week, he popped up to Spelman not too long ago, and I met him for the first time. It was such a good feeling. And
that's another thing about HBCUs. A lot of people don't know this, but HBCUs have produced some of the greatest figures in, just the world in general.
Doctors, lawyers.
Dr. King, Martin Luther King.
Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson, Spike Lee.
Edwin B. Moses.
Edwin C. Moses.
C. Moses.
Yes. Thurgood Marshall, who went to Howard University. Denzel Washington's son. I don't know if y'all watch
John David Washington.
I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, and we're just naming Morehouse alumni, Howard. There's plenty out there.
And I'll say
Ross B. Henson, Chadwick Boseman, Howard alumnus.
I don't want to just put Morehouse in the spotlight for this show because all HBCUs deserve a chance. I'm talking about Albany State, Fort Valley,
Bethune-Cookman,
Payne College,
Morehouse College. I didn't even know there was one until like
North Carolina A&T, Benedict College. All the colleges that don't get, that aren't as popularized, aren't as well funded as the other popular HBCUs, because there's just something about that mystique at every HBCU, and I mean every HBCU, that just empowers you. It forces you to expect more than you could possibly expect of yourself on your own. It's like a second family. They put so much weight on your shoulders because that's what real life is when you step out into the real world. People of our skin color are challenged day after day after day to be twice as better as the white man or as any other. So HBCUs in general, not just Morehouse, they are the place to be now because there's so many opportunities.
The whole point of HBCUs was for African Americans to feel like that they were not being judged by society, and I think that's been really capitalized and really well pointed out ever since my time at Morehouse. Now, for those who don't go to HBCUs, I've noticed recently that when it comes to HBCUs, people usually think of Howard, Morehouse, Spelman, Hampton, FAMU, and North Carolina A&T. While those are some big household names, there's plenty more that have their own unique traditions, their own unique mystiques, and they produce some alumnus. But for me personally, I think the biggest factor about HBCUs is that African Americans feel like they don't have to be judged. They're around their own people. They can just be themselves. Whereas if it was a PWI, if they went to a good PWI, I'm sure they would still do very well. It's just that I feel like they'd have to be a little more careful when it comes to society because there is a possible chance that you can still experience racism at University of Georgia, University of Maryland, whatever PWI.
And it also opens your eyes to a different level of diversity within your own culture. I mean, everybody's talking about how and you hear this in all forms of media, that all black people act the same, all black people eat the same food, all people have the same. It's not true.
The media tries to paint it that way, but once you actually step onto the campus and actually experience it, you won't experience it in just one day. You have to have a few days to really realize that the media is painting somewhat of a lie.
And in terms of the education, and this will be my last point on this question, I know I have plenty more. It just opens it opens doors to so many different levels of knowledge within your own culture. I'm learning things about the African diaspora. I mean, just African diaspora. I never learned anything about that in high school. About the Egyptian and Nubian empires. Talking about how, You know, everyone always starts at slavery, but they don't go further beyond that. You know, the age of antiquity.
And because I went to a PWI, they would talk about African American slavery, but of course they wouldn't go deep into the history. And for disclosed reasons, I'm not going to explain why. But at Morehouse and any other HBCUs, they'll go all out because it's important to learn your history. It's important to get to the deep roots of it. But in high school, if you go to a PWI, they're not going to explain the full thing. They're not going to explain the full context. And you know what? Forget. I feel like some white teachers who explain African American history, they are a bit too embarrassed because, of course, maybe their ancestors were part of that whole little, I don't know, racism stuff. So it's understandable. But if you go to an HBCU and you learn your own history through the lens of a black professor,
it makes you the most powerful man in the world.
There you go.
Or
woman. There you go.
Man, woman, child, whatever. It makes you feel that way, and it's so good to feel that way because if you walk into any door, if you're working in corporate, if you're doing journalism, or if you're doing anything else, sports, whatever, if you walk in the door feeling that way about your own self, you've already won the battle.
I've seen countless African Americans who have already graduated from college, or friends who are in college right now, who are doing very well at PWIs, but at one point or another, they ended up saying, I wish I had gone to an HBCU. The one choice in life that I absolutely regret is not choosing an HBCU. I've heard that several times. I've lost count.
So can you tell me a little bit about that transition of you, you know, entering college, from being a senior in high school and entering college your freshman year?
I'll start off with this.
And we'll come back after these commercial purposes.
Welcome back to Education Matters. I'm your host, Robert Miller, and these are my co-hosts,
Thomas Smith,
Cece Patterson,
and our guest,
FREDDRELL Green,
and Miles Pierre.
Thomas with the first question.
And we'll go ahead and pick up right where we left off about, you know, that transition between being a senior in high school to becoming a freshman in college.
So for mine, it wasn't as hard as I thought, but the one that really took me off guard the most was the big culture shock between Morehouse and the PWI that I grew up in for high school. And sorry about that. So I grew up in a PWI, and it was for a lot of white kids, and Morehouse is an HBCU. Mm-hmm. So it was a bit of a different understanding, and being around my own people, it just really opened my mind up to be like what it really means to be a black man. It took some getting used to, but I think I really enjoyed it overall.
Sorry.
I have two questions. What's something that you can compare a PWI and an HBCU college? And then also, is there any negative things about HBCUs in general that you just want to talk about?
There is. Now, the biggest difference between PWIs and HBCUs, I'm going to be quite honest, is the resources. Obviously, PWIs will have better resources than HBCUs, and PWIs will have better sports, and they'll have better teams. But HBCUs is not to be overlooked. The sports games is a really fun event to be at, but something I've noticed when it comes to football games in particular is when it comes to PWIs, all everyone's focused on is the game, and for the right reasons. And at the HBCUs, the games really don't matter that much. It's more so the socialism and what a lot of people tend to be on, which is called the yard, mainly like at Morehouse or Howard. I don't know if that's how it works on other HBCUs. I'm sure that's how it is, but the games, not everyone's going to be there. It's mainly all the different social activities. And another huge difference between PWIs and HBCUs is the homecoming events. PWI homecoming. Dude, Spellhouse homecoming. In fact, our Spellhouse homecoming is at the end of the month. It's undeniably the biggest tradition of Morehouse and Spelman. The homecoming is when Spelman College and Morehouse College, they combine their homecoming into one. Yes. And the PWI's homecoming, I think it's over a weekend, I'm pretty sure. Whereas HBCU's, it's a week-long celebration. Now, don't get tripped up. It's mainly an event where all the alumni come back, but it's also a time where current students can talk to alumni about the certain fields that they're studying in and their experiences at their certain HBCUs and really meet some important people. But homecoming, it's definitely an event that you should absolutely be looking forward to if you think about going to an HBCU. I went to Howard's homecoming last year, and I have to admit, it was fun, but it also really sealed the deal for me that it just was not it for me, because I grew up in DC. I grew up around Howard, so I'm really looking forward to Spellhouse's homecoming this year and how that's really going to change my life for sure.
Yeah, I'll say this about homecoming. If you ever think about going to an HBCU, I mean, my dad always tells me this about HBCUs. You know, you're going to have the greatest fun, the most fun that you've ever had in your entire life in those 4 years. Homecoming is definitely #1 on that list. You'll have, I mean, last year we had Drake and
21 Savage.
21 Savage show up to Morehouse's homecoming.
We don't even know who's coming this year. It's possible Drake might come back.
It is possible, but you know, it was jam-packed to the point where I think about 30,000+ people came into the, last year's Morehouse homecoming, Spellhouse homecoming. And keep in mind, you know, Morehouse can only hold like a little over 2,000. 38,000. I saw this picture online about how many people were at the Spellhouse.
It was like you couldn't even move. I'm serious.
But it's
you couldn't even get
fun.
to. And now that Deuce and I are freshmen, I'm just thinking about, because of how many people are going to turn up, how are we even going to get to our dorms in this traffic jam? It's going to be nuts.
I mean, you'll have so many events. I mean, the football game is one thing, but it's like you'll see the marching band. You'll have all these different alums coming out and saying what's up to you, getting to know them, networking. You'll have the step shows, you know, the frats, the sorors, man. Like, I mean, God, like it's like so much all compact into one. It's like, and I'm talking about this and I'm not even at homecoming yet. It's just the hype, the build-up from these past 2 months has been preparing me for that because of all the events I've been going to and all of the activities I've been doing. Man, like, it's just one of those things that you have to attend. Like, it's like my mom always tells me, if you don't like it, just go one time and try it out and see. Homecoming, we'll see.
And for me, I will talk about the marching band, but first, are any of you guys musicians?
Yes, yes.
You are? Okay. Yeah, I'm a musician myself. You're a musician too?
I was gonna ask, like, what do you mean by musician?
That means, are you a singer? Do you play any instruments?
Oh, well, yes.
Okay, then you are a musician. Then for HBCUs, the marching band is a essential staple, not just at homecoming, but in general. PWIs, marching bands are fun, but that's not, people tend to, I mean, it's very nice when it comes to the football games, but HBCUs, you're going to see the marching band like play all over campus. And I will be quite frank, there's no better marching band in terms of HBCU than the Marching 100 at Florida A&M University.
Yes,
I will be honest, Florida A&M is absolutely #1. And although Morehouse is not to be overlooked, I mean, Morehouse has a pretty good band, but in terms of HBCUs, the #1, I think everyone knows, is Florida A&M's.
I mean, why would you rank Jackson State on that?
See, I don't know Jackson State like that, so I have no idea.
And the people at Southern that say you just told a fib.
Yeah, going back to what Thomas's point about the transition between high school and college, I want to ask you two, was there any pressure into you two going into college, or about the decision going into college, let alone an HBCU?
Deuce, you want to start off?
Yeah, okay. So, for me, you know, as I told you in the first segment, it was a scholarship that I got offered by the University of Missouri. I was heavily recruited by their journalism program. They gave me a lot of money to go there. I ended up declining. I applied to Morehouse, and same as Miles Pierre, I didn't really get any, you know, bona fide scholarships, just a little financial aid and some outside scholarship on the side.
Yeah.
So, long story short, I mean, I'm fighting to get some other scholarships that Morehouse has to offer, but it's $52,000 a year.
No, it's
total
50.
cost.
It's 50K.
50K?
Yeah.
It's 50K a year to go to Morehouse. So that's like $200,000+ you're having to spend. You know, that's one of the negatives I would say there is in attending HBCUs, particularly ones that are private and they're prestigious, like Morehouse and Howard, because, you know, there hasn't been, and I will say that they are trying to change that. A lot of, like, our president, David A. Thomas, the president of Morehouse, is trying
12th president of Morehouse.
12th president.
I had to add that.
Yes.
It's the 12th.
He is actually in the middle of a campaign to give Morehouse, to find enough money for Morehouse for it to be need blind. Now, need blind, I want y'all to listen to this. Need blind means that the rest of the cost that doesn't get covered by financial aid or scholarships via college, the college will cover that. They'll have the money to cover that, making you more financially stable throughout your college journey. So that's one of the things I would say is like one of the pitfalls of going to Morehouse is because you're having to fight for opportunities to fund your education. You know, they do have things like the Bonner Scholarship where you, if you get selected, you'll do community service.
That's a full ride scholarship.
Full ride at Morehouse. You know, they have the Oprah Winfrey Scholars Program. They got so many other opportunities, and it's like it's like what they told my mom. If once you get your child in the first year, you'll be able to find opportunities once he gets in. But it's really hard because Morehouse and other HBCUs in general are just very competitive because everybody's looking out, is trying to get that same thing. Everybody wants to be great. And that's also one of the beauties of HBCUs in particular, is because because if you find the right the batch of students that come in, you know, our class in particular, we're the largest class to come into Morehouse.
We are.
Everybody is fighting for that opportunity. It's like what Dr. Ilya Davis, the director of Freshmen and Seniors Academic Success.
If you go to Morehouse, or even if you don't go to Morehouse, I mean, if you've been on the campus, you will absolutely know Ilya Davis. In my opinion, besides David A. Thomas, he's the one face that literally every single soul on that campus knows, and for the right reason.
He pushes
wonderful man.
Every single one of us that you will fail.
He is the freshman and the senior dean. He's the dean of the freshman and the senior class.
Yes. So the thing about Morehouse in particular that separates from any other institution, I feel, and it has been pushed on us through NSO, is that you will learn to accept failure, and through failure you will succeed.
The greatest teacher failure is.
Because it is so competitive. Everybody's coming from all these different backgrounds. They've been accepted to all these Ivy League schools, all these top schools. They've done this, that, and the third. They've been in Jack and Jill. They've amassed hundreds of hours of community service. They have 4.0s. And, you know, it's guys like, I don't know what your GPA was coming out of high school, but I mean, I came out with 3.5. I was doing, you know.
I wasn't that high, but it was good.
I was doing
3.3.
You know, radio show. I did a little bit of community service. I was an honor student, but it's like there were other guys. And I think this is one of the fears I had coming into Morehouse, was that I was afraid of how competitive it would be, to the point where I was wondering whether or not what I brought to the table was enough. But now coming into Morehouse and having sort of began to cement my place within the campus, I am more and more confident that I will succeed and that I will leave something that's worthwhile, something that will last forever on that campus, same as how I did at Cedar Shows.
And I did hear another question that Kareem had earlier. Are there some negative things about HBCUs? I don't think we ever talked about that.
Well, I told them that the funding and the scholarship opportunities, there's not a whole lot at the moment for Morehouse.
My other question was, I couldn't get in. Do you feel, I know this is kind of like controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Go right ahead.
Do you feel like all black people should like at least try to go or go to an HBCU, and why or why not?
Ooh, okay, let me answer this one. I've never been asked that before, and I'll be honest, no, HBCUs is not required. It's just highly encouraged. But at the end of the day, when it comes to college, do what is best for you. It doesn't matter if you go to an HBCU or not. The whole point is for you to really find yourself, get a great education, and get out there with a degree so you can get a good job and really get a good life afterwards. HBCUs will give you that, but so will PWIs. If you have a passion in a certain field that HBCUs will not offer, PWIs will. Not every black person goes to an HBCU. Not all of the greatest African Americans in the world went to HBCUs. A lot of them did, but not all of them did. So if you find your passion elsewhere, PWIs may be for you, but I will be quite frank, if you are really trying to find out what it means to be a black man, you won't do that. You won't find that at a PWI. I'll be quite frank with you. HBCUs are the place to do that.
I'll say this about that question. I'm glad you asked that, Kareem. For me, and I'll give a story on this particular journalist that I follow a lot of.
Make it the short story.
But,
About to say.
if it's short, then we'll probably have to go into the next break because I really want to like go in depth on this. But are you finna go on break?
Yep.
Okay. I want to continue in the next segment. So.
Okay.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Good morning, Athens, and welcome back to Education Matters. My name is Kareem, Lumpkin, and joining me are my co-hosts,
Robert Miller,
Thomas Smith,
And Cece Patterson.
and our guest.
FREDDRELL Green.
And Miles PIERRE.
But before we start today's show, I will give us our words to grow on. You can't depend on your eyes when your imagination is out of focus, by Mark Twain. So, FREDDRELL, can you finish what you were talking about before the break?
Yeah, so your question was whether or not all black people should consider an HBCU. And I'll give you this story by this famous journalist that I follow. His name's Roland Martin. He went to Texas A&M University. He always talks about this story about how with him, his family couldn't afford to take him anywhere else but that school because everyone else in his family could afford, was able to get a scholarship from there. They just knew a certain way to get it. And so he was like he was kind of in the same boat as me. You know, he was getting recruited by some of the top journalism schools and all these other places, especially in HBCUs like Texas Southern. Well, no, he wasn't recruited, but he didn't get recruited by schools like Texas Southern or any other HBCU. None of them considered him. But even if he did, he wasn't going to just pick any school because he had to follow the money. Now what that means is he was thinking about his family's financial situation. And so he went to Texas A&M and got his degree there, which is a PWI, because he just simply couldn't afford it. Now again, with me, Morehouse College is a $50,000+ school cost of attendance, total cost of attendance. With me, you know, my family, they can afford to get me through 4 years. They're still trying to push on me that I get scholarships there. And I will. But I don't think every black person should consider I don't think every black person should go to an HBCU. They're not obligated to go to an HBCU because you don't limit black culture to just a college campus. It's not what you do when you're at an HBCU or when you're in college. It's not what you do there that makes you a great black man or great for the black culture. It's what you do after college. It's what you do for the culture, you know. I can have that same level of passion and commitment to my people if I went to UGA, like Mr. Dunn. I mean, Mr. Dunn is the perfect example of that. This man was one of the first UGA students to go to college there.
Fun fact, touching on UGA, I told you that I didn't tell you my grandfather, he was the first African-American dean at UGA, so yeah, I did want to.
Exactly. You don't have to go to an HBCU. It's just, for me, just HBCUs are a gateway to better understanding the culture, strengthening your knowledge and your character, and so that you can come out, and if you don't have that same level of commitment or capacity for the culture, then you'll have it when you graduate. It's a matter of choice, really. You know, HBCUs should not be something that you just push on anyone.
Do you think it would have been difficult to adapt to a PWI compared to a HBCU?
For me, absolutely not, because I pretty much grew up in a PWI for high school, so it would have basically just felt like another 4 years of high school, but much bigger. In fact, like I told you, I was thinking about going to Eckerd or Colorado, and because both of them had my original majors. And had I not gotten to Morehouse, there would have been a possible chance I really would have, and it would have been no different. Although at some point I felt like if I did go there, it would have clicked in, man, I really should have gone to an HBCU. Yeah. But for me, no, it would not have been difficult at all. Maybe in terms of like the location, perhaps, and how far away from home it would be. Because both of those places, I didn't have much family. I mean, I had a few relatives in Denver, in Colorado, and Florida, I really didn't have that much family. But yeah, just in terms of the PWI, no, it would not have been hard to adapt at all.
For me, I don't think it really would have mattered, but I mean, I feel like HBCUs, the culture and the education that I get there, it's much more needed. Like, I need that more. Because, like, if I had went to Missouri or any other school and studied there, I probably would have been well off because, you know, they would have had more resources and I would have graduated on time and I would have been pretty well off. But because of HBCUs, because of me choosing Morehouse, I've been able to better understand my community. I've been a lot more sensitive to the social issues that have been going on because we have things like Crown Forum every Thursday and student orientation on Tuesday that, you know, where we have these guest speakers. And this is unique to Morehouse, where they'll come and talk about social issues in the community to expand your horizons on these issues. And I'll say this about Morehouse as well. Particularly for my major, I feel like this is the best place for me to go study journalism because it allows for me to study all the different disciplines outside of journalism, like history, science, math, and all that, because it's a liberal arts college. Morehouse presses that really hard. It's a liberal arts institution. And so the goal they place on us is not for us to go to college to get a job. It's to go to college to better educate yourself and to have a love for education for all the different disciplines once you graduate. And I feel like that will, you know, help me in the long run because I'll come into any job with the knowledge and skill to succeed wherever I go. Same for anyone else that goes to Morehouse or any other HBCU liberal arts institution.
Yeah. And for me, okay, go ahead.
I was gonna ask you 2 questions. The first question was, what majors think that like people want to study in, like especially black people? What majors do you feel like are good for people like black people to go to like HBCU? Because I know you said like what you're majoring in is you think that is the best thing here at your HBCU, but I just want to know like what are the majors that are best for that are
you mean for African Americans in general?
Yeah. Not African Americans, but like, you know, like how people study in all types of different things. What do you feel like is the most common or the most
common? Definitely when it comes to Morehouse, business.
And I got to touch on this real quick. Okay. I said that liberal arts was a big thing at Morehouse, but this is kind of what ticks me off about Morehouse College. And if they're hearing this and they have something to say to me about it, I don't care. But,
okay.
But Morehouse, really, it's a liberal arts college, but they place so much emphasis and funding into their business program.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Dunn, if you can correct me on this, but business has nothing to do with the liberal arts.
No, you're right.
Right?
It kind of ticks me off too, because
I mean, and we talk a lot about this in my sociology class. Morehouse grooms you to get into the PWI businesses that are out there. I mean, it's a great place because it's an HBCU and it betters your understanding of your culture, but I feel like it could do a lot better job of getting you to graduate and to feed back into Black America, like starting Black-owned businesses, working in Black-owned companies. I feel like they do too much of trying to get you to work at Goldman Sachs or Wall Street or anywhere else. I feel like that's a huge problem because they're grooming you. I mean, they're teaching you all this stuff about black culture, but they're just at the end of the day, they're just grooming you to go and work for the white man.
In fact, Deuce and I actually went to a career fair a few weeks ago. You were there, right?
Yeah.
I saw you there. It was a few weeks ago. It was in downtown Atlanta, and it was mainly for upperclassmen, but freshmen were allowed. It was a opportunity for all grade levels to get a potential internship with like big shot companies. But the one thing that I kind of figured, but still kind of ticked me off anyway, is that most, if not almost all, the internships there had something to do with like business, finance, economics, or literally nothing that had to do with journalism, media. I will wholeheartedly admit, I was looking for some wildlife internships, and I already knew I was going to find any there. So once I gave up that search, at least in terms of career fair, I was looking for some media internships because I kind of figured those would be there. To my surprise, there wasn't.
Well, this is the one that we had just now, right?
The one that was in downtown Atlanta?
Yeah. Warner Brothers was there. CNN was there. So, I don't know if
CNN was there, but that's a news channel.
I mean, there wasn't
That's
that
still
many,
media.
but yeah.
And then my second question was, like, do you feel like that people that I know it's kind of a stretch on the other question, but do you feel like that people that study kind of like that's really not business or liberal arts? That's what I was trying to ask. Do you feel like those people should like go to like HBCUs, or do you feel like they should go somewhere else with that, or go somewhere else with to another college that actually like supports that or something?
You want to take that one? Because I have
Yeah.
something to say about that, but I'm going to let you say it first.
If you're going to school just to get a job, I don't think a HBCU should be considered.
Or college, really. If you want to go to job, people still get jobs and don't even go to college. I mean,
not jobs, but like majors, like they have different jobs.
You're talking about like schools that like put emphasis on like the majors and stuff. I mean, well,
Like,
it depends on.
Like if you were studying marine biology or something in that like field or so, do you feel like going to HBCU is not really an ideal?
Nah, Morehouse used to have marine biology. In fact, Samuel L. Jackson used to study it, but I'm not familiar with any HBCUs that have marine. Maybe FAMU does, but
I'll say this about these programs and these majors. It's hard to find an HBCU that has a stellar program in those majors.
yeah, it was for me too with the wildlife stuff.
I mean, because Morehouse, their journalism program is relatively new. It's about the same age as this program here. If I were to go to somewhere like Howard University or North Carolina A&T, I would probably have a better chance, or better opportunities. But I don't think it really matters. I think what matters is how much work you put in to the program that they give you, and how much you're willing to get the career that you want when you graduate. But again, and I'll keep stressing this, I feel like too many of our HBCUs are prepping us to go and work for predominantly white institutions, and I don't really see enough programs that are gearing us to help out those black-owned institutions so that we could be on the same level, if not surpass, those institutions. Like I can remember when the Black News Channel. I don't know if y'all heard about that, but the Black News Channel had shut down a couple of years ago and I watched this video, but basically they were trying to go to a scale that was at the level of like a CNN or Fox News. Mm-hmm. They were trying to meet the standards of the white-owned media companies.
Right. Yeah.
They weren't willing to take it slow and start off like any other particular black-owned company was. I feel like everything in life in general it's just, no matter how you slice it, it's just viewed through a white prism.
And now we will go into commercial break.
Welcome to Education Matters. My name is Cece Patterson, and joining me are my co-hosts
Kareem, Lumpkin.
Robert Miller.
Thomas Smith.
And today our guests are
Miles PIERRE.
And FREDDRELL Green.
So my question about black journalism: what does journalism do for the black community, and then does it like improve or help the black community?
You're the journalist. You might as well answer this.
I'll answer this first, but I feel like you got to answer this too.
Okay.
See, ever since I joined, this program, Education Matters, I began a deep study of what this particular type of journalism was. I had no idea that this was actually a black-owned radio station, WXAG. That's where this show airs. For me, black journalism, it dates back to the very first black-owned black-owned newspaper, the Freedom's Journal, or is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yeah. Freedom Journal. A quote that I live by. We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. The thing about black journalism that really fascinates me is that there's so many significant marks in history that they've done. You've got so many different newspapers and public and broadcast stations that are out there. Like, you've got newspapers like the Atlanta Daily World, the Atlanta Voice, the Philadelphia Tribune, I think, the Chicago Defender,
The New York Times, and the
No, the New York Times is not a black-owned newspaper. But
I didn't.
what really fascinated me about that was the entrepreneurship side of it, because a lot of these were started up by black people that had that kind of mindset, an entrepreneurial mindset. And I feel like that's what drives my ultimate career goal. I don't just want to be a journalist. I want to start my own media brand that's black owned, that tells stories through a variety of mediums, you know, art, digital, audio, video, you name it.
So is it gonna kind of be like Revolt News, that black?
Yeah, kind of like Revolt News. I'm glad I didn't even know you knew that.
Well, my parents watch it sometimes.
Oh yeah?
Seems like you got good exposure.
Yep. But yeah, that's really my ultimate goal. And then I also want to continue the work that, you know, Mr. Dunn is doing by educating young people in general, not just black people, but young people, on how journalism can expose you to a variety of different things that are happening or going on in the world. You know, because for me, as soon as I was exposed to this is what I wanted to do. But it can expose you to all different types of careers because you cover so many different things that are going on in the community. And I feel like that's one of the things that I admire about y'all being here interviewing us. It's the confidence that you gain. It's the skill sets that you learn. And ultimately, this will help you get into schools like Morehouse or Clark Atlanta or Howard or Spelman. So yeah, I just want to say y'all keep up the good work. Y'all are black journalists. Y'all are continuing the mission that the Freedom's Journal in 1827 started. You know, having your own voice and expressing it and telling the stories that really matter.
This is true.
Are there any perceptions about college or HBCUs that you've heard that are not true?
Okay,
You start off and then I'll finish it off. But yeah,
you may think that there aren't any white students that go to HBCUs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
That's what y'all think?
Yep.
Let me
No white students?
Let me explain that. So there are a few HBCUs. There's one example called Bluefield State University
Yes.
where there's more white people than black people, and I will admit there's very few white students that go to certain like the big household HBCUs like Howard and Spelman and Morehouse. I don't see there's like a few white students at Morehouse, and they're not discriminated against. White students don't get discriminated against in HBCUs. Sure, they might get questions of why did you come here, like why Morehouse, why Howard, why did you go to a PWI instead? They will get questions sometimes, but at the end of the day, there's no discriminatory. But there are at least 3 HBCUs that I know of that have way more whites than blacks, and in my eyes, that's not an HBCU anymore. It used to be, but now it's not, I suppose.
My question was, I was gonna ask, like,
Take your time.
I was gonna ask,
Before we go ahead and end it off here, I hope you don't mind, Kareem, but I just wanted you to talk about the Maroon Tiger recruitment.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So earlier today, actually, we just found out that we are now going to be part of the #1 HBCU
newspaper and HBCU.
It's called the Maroon Tiger, named
Maroon
after
team.
our esteemed mascot.
Mm-hmm.
And I am one of the brand new photographers, and FREDDRELL here is one of the.
I am a features writer.
So we just found out that we also have to have new quotas within the first.
So we already have a meeting on Wednesday.
It meets every Tuesday.
We gotta think of pitches on what stories we want to do and stuff like that. We have a bi-weekly quota that we have to meet.
There's plenty of different travel opportunities that you can have with the Maroon Tiger, and because we're freshmen, we're just taking our steps at a time.
Yeah.
But it's a really new opportunity to expand our respective businesses that we've created. His with Greenlit, mine with PIERRE, and I think Maroon Tiger is really just going to give us really excellent opportunities for us to expand our skills and passions for journalism and photography, respectively. Now,
media in general, storytelling.
Yeah, I don't have that much skill in videography, but I think Maroon Tiger is really going to help me with that before I actually study CTEMS next year. Because right now I can just take freshman-based courses, but CTEMS major, I cannot start that until next year, so Maroon Tiger will help me with that.
And just for the listeners, CTEMS is
Cinema,
television,
emerging media studies. There you go.
It's film,
Yes.
basically.
Yes.
But also, I wanted to add, I am also a part of the newly found, the Morehouse College Association of Black Journalists, which is like a student chapter for the National Association of Black Journalists. I'm a founding member of that chapter as well.
And while I have not, before you go, Kareem, I have not been to many meetings of this, but I am a member of the Morehouse Filmmakers Association as well. I've not been to many meetings, I'll admit that, but that'll change because, of course, I got a busy schedule when it comes to that.
I know somebody already talked to you about this, but not necessarily. When you like went to like like in the last year of high school, people said in college like that college is scary and stuff. Is that actually like is there any like lies that, well, not really lies, but like stuff that people tell you in like in your senior year of high school that really isn't true when you get to college?
It's college is how you make it, to be honest. You can't depend on other stories or people from other stories for you to like see how college it is. You have to when you're in college, you're on your own path, you're away from home, you're away from your parents. In college, you're telling your own story. Your story is being forged. You are its creator. So college is how you make it. You can't just depict it from other people's stories, because other people's stories is going to be different from yours. That's how I see it. College is how you make it.
Sounds like life.
Yeah, exactly. It is life. It pretty much is the beginning of real life.
Before we go, we always have to ask these.
We got more time.
Oh.
I guess I'll ask this question now then. How did you two know that journalism and CTEMS was something that you wanted to go into for college?
For me, CTEMS was, there wasn't too many majors that I was interested in, especially because Morehouse didn't have the wildlife. Yeah. But because I was really passionate in photography at the time and I saw cinema, TV, and film, I thought, oh, well, okay, maybe I can expand my photography skills. I realized that there's much more than that. It does involve screenwriting, and while I don't have much experience in like making movies, that's not exactly how I pictured myself, but I think before I got to Morehouse, I realized that I can combine the wildlife and the photography and the videography into one. National Geographic immediately rang a bell, so I knew I'd have to train myself in those skills. So CTEMS, I think, was just a really perfect field for me because I can really master those videography and photography skills in college and still have them by the time I do this wildlife conservation stuff in grad school. And by the time I'm out of that, National Geographic qualified. That's what I hope to be.
Yes, sir. For me, again, and I don't know how many times I can say this, but this program made me. This program defined what it is I wanted to do with my life, and that is journalism. Not just journalism, but storytelling in general. I've always had a passion for it. I would read comic books about, superheroes and stuff in general. I watch a lot of movies, TV, you name it, With journalism, it's like this program opened, it expanded my horizons and what I could do by having me host this show, interview numerous guests, and through my experience on the student publication at Cedar Shoals, Cedar Blueprints, that also honed my skill set and gave me other opportunities to practice journalism through different mediums, like print, audio, video, with the JADcast, which is the podcast, WJGTV, which is the broadcast station and whatnot. But again, this program really opened the door for me by having me want to pursue journalism and ultimately create my own storytelling platform.
Yeah, for me, I mainly did freelancing and photography. I wasn't part of the LASSO. That's my alma mater high school, Meridian High School. Shout out Roll Stangs. But I was not part of that. But college, it's really gonna expand my photography skills. That's why I tried it.
The essential question.
Before we, everybody on the shows knows that we always have a question at the end. So our question is, why is education matter, and why does education matter, and why is it so important to you?
I'll start.
Ooh, okay, good one.
I feel like education matters because, as W.E.B. Du Bois stated, I will destroy this quote, but it is an opportunity for people in college and who aren't even going to school to expand their knowledge on the world and what they're doing, and to better prepare themselves for the struggles that life has waiting for you, especially, you know, for people of our skin color, black people. Education is so important because people were literally fighting to take it away or keep it away from us. And so it's so important because it expands your horizons on numerous things.
It's an opportunity to grow, and it's an opportunity for you to show the world what you can do. For you to really explore yourself, it's an opportunity for you to show the world your skills and what you're capable of and how you can make change in the world. Education comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for listening to Education Matters, the official voice of the youth. Education Matters is sponsored by Drug Free Athens and me, Radio-Athens.com. If you missed any portion of this program or would like to hear it again, it can be heard Monday at 5:30 p.m. or Tuesday at 10 a.m. on me, Radio-Athens.com. You can also listen on demand at YouTube channel Education Matters Network. Education Matters is a production of the High School Completion Initiative.
The house!